working tonight.
He a friend of yours?
No.
Please.
Where's her body?
What was the first idea that evolved into this film? Where did it all start?
I think it really came from a desire to tell a multiverse story from like kind of a different point of view, right? Where the idea that like if there's an infinite amount of universes out there, then the differences between them could be infinitely small. So if you're, we want to tell a personal multiverse story where it was all about someone trying to change the circumstances and how frustrating that would be if they're going from one universe to another, to another, to another. And they were largely the same with just very small differences. And what would that do to somebody? So that was really, I think, the nugget of the idea. And then Irene, her character, really kind of bloomed out of that idea.
So it actually started with the idea of traveling through dimensions. And then you got the whole idea about grief entering that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that theme of grief plays into a lot of our work inadvertently sometimes. But yeah, we're kind of always coming from a point of view of like, loving different genres and trying to figure out what our spin would be. How do you make something a little bit different? And then and kind of coming from it from that angle first, usually.
And we're crazy about revenge movies, and it felt like an exciting way to do a revenge film. But the feeling of you never really get that catharsis if he's still out there in a different version. And so that kind of never-ending quest for revenge and how unsatisfying and uncathartic that could be was exciting for us.
When you knew you were going to make a movie with time travel or dimensional travel, did you sit down and discuss the rules for this world?
Well, honestly, that's a lovely thing about the multiverse is that I think people are so worried about doing time travel stuff, and we love time travel stories. We've written a few, but time travel is tricky, right? Because you get the grandfather paradox, and there's all these rules, and there are rules that it seems like everybody's got to obey the same rules now, and it's a really complicated thing. Whereas the multiverse, everything's moving just forward, right? And so it's not as complicated. And sometimes I'll watch a multiverse movie that is overly complicated and it's a lot of sci-fi jargon and I'm like, I don't think it has to be this complicated. I think you could go in from one to the next and that's really all there is to it. And so it was nice to figure out how do we strip this down and just make it as simple as possible.
We travel through dimensions, but reality is the same. So time as well is the same in all the universes. So
yeah, Monday's a Monday, Tuesday's a Tuesday, right? So it's like she goes in and then it's just waking up the next day and moving on. And I think that's why you find that occasionally she doesn't know exactly where Neville's going to be because it's just another day. I mean, she knows his work schedule, that kind of thing, and assumes it's going to be very similar in the next universe. And the fact that they're so similar is actually her superpower. And that, well, she can use a set of keys from an old universe that'll probably work. And if it doesn't, well, she's got another one or a Wi-Fi password or whatever it might be. And that's, there's that scene at the Penske parking lot, the rental truck parking lot, where you see her going through a bunch of keys. And you're like, yeah, she stole this in some universe at some point, stole the whole bin of keys. And now she's always trying them out and seeing what's going to work and what's not going to work. And that there's a lot of joy in kind of this like kind of mundane super power that she has. But yeah, definitely.
Even though you talk about this being a very small world to some extent, because it's the same, there is so much world building around it as well. Could you talk a little bit about how much of this world do you know already? Have you mapped out in your own in your own heads or together, and how much is just up for imagination?
I think that's what's fun about it is that it leaves room for the audience's imagination, right? Of course, Kevin and I have our ideas for what we think happened and is going on. We actually used to have this long sort of voiceover monologue that Irene did that really explained a lot of the ins and outs and where she's from and how this works and how illegal owning one of these machines is and all this kind of crazy stuff and just how the multiverse works. And it was because when we first were coming up with this idea, there weren't many multiverse stories. It was sort of like, like sliding doors and, but there wasn't a lot. And so we're like, we're going to have to explain what this is to the audience and bring them the water on it. By the time we actually got to make it, everything's a multiverse movie, right? And so all of a sudden you're like, we don't have to introduce this to the audience at all, and we can let's just strip this out because they get it. The audience is sophisticated enough and understands this enough to just get it. And then there's all these like nice little, what kind of that allows you to have is later on when they're meeting other travelers and you're getting these sort of windows into what that other world is. It's more mysterious, and I think it's more fun, and I think it gives the audience this sort of interaction with the movie to kind of bridge those gaps and connect those dots.
You mentioned other multiverse films. Were there any particular films in that genre that inspired you, or which films or filmmakers have inspired you on this project?
You know, I think for the multiverse, because the idea kind of was born a while ago. There wasn't a ton of multiverse, at least not in the way it is now, that was super inspiring. Really, where it was coming from was other sci-fi genres. I think we talked a lot about how when time travel was starting to become more common, at first it felt like it was more an opportunity to just like do a fantasy story, right? Like you do time travel so you could live among the dinosaurs or be part of King Arthur's court or whatever, something along those lines. You'd be like, it's more an opportunity to get the modern man somewhere unexpected. And then, but the ones that really resonated with us were the ones that were super personal. You know, movies like Back to the Future and The Terminator. So how do you tell a big sci-fi concept, but in a really personal sense? So The Terminator, in a lot of ways, was our North Star as a sci-fi story where in many scenes the sci-fi is really at such an arm's length. You know, you might see Arnold, but if you didn't know any better, you might not know that he's a robot. You know, and you might not know that they're time travelers. You might just be watching an LA crime story. So that was probably the biggest inspiration. That, and then another great revenge movie called Blue Ruin, which we absolutely adore. That is such a fantastic story that you know, the first act is largely unspoken, and you're really just following the process the whole way through. That always tickles us. So that was a big inspiration for the first really 15 minutes of this movie. It was like, how do we tell as much of the story with the least amount possible, where the audience just has to go on this ride with Irene.
It's funny you mentioned the Terminator, because I got some serious Sarah Connor vibes from Irene. Was that was intentional? I guess.
I mean, how could she not be a huge inspiration? It's so Irene is played by our sister Michaela, and turning her into Sarah Connor was definitely a dream come true. I think there's one shot in particular that every time I watch, I'm like, there's Sarah Connor, here she comes. It's after she, you know, she kills Travis and she's going after the other smuggler and she's walking up all badass, and you're like, yeah, there she is. She's in the desert and there's the smoke and it's the whole thing. So yeah, of course, Sarah Connor is I think every sci-fi nerd's dream girl and ideal protagonist. So it's it was fun being able to do that.
Did you ever on set as directors to your sister say, this is your Sarah Connor moment, just your or something like that?
Probably. I mean, I remember seeing her with a shotgun at some point. It was really early on in the shoot that she's shooting the shotgun like she's shot a million guns in her life. And this is her first, I think it's probably the third time she had shot a gun. We brought her to a shooting range just to get her to like be used to the whole experience. And she hates guns and she was kind of worried. And then she's doing these full load shotguns, like shots in the middle of the woods, and it's echoing through the canyon. She's never looked cooler. And it was such a Sarah Connor moment. And so, yeah, no, I mean, that was constantly popping in our heads.
Yeah, she's very badass in this film. So, yes, Irene is played by your sister, and you are, of course, brothers. How did the family connection influence the project behind the scenes?
It's so nice that we get to work together, and I think we all realize how rare that is. We grew up making movies together, and our mom is a community theater actress, done some professional stuff back in Rhode Island, where we grew up, so pretty far from Hollywood. But she gave us the bug. You know, she was in murder mysteries and stuff growing up, and we thought it was the coolest, most exciting thing. And then we got the family camcorder and started making things together. And now we get to do it at this level with each other. And I think all of us don't take it for granted. We're so happy to be there together. We're all like just really trying to make the best thing we can and try to support each other. And it's a nice thing. You know, I feel like it's really made us closer. So Michaela is in it, and my mom actually has a little cameo in the film as well, and Kevin's kids have a cameo. So there's a lot of family stuff throughout.
Talking about Irene's character a little bit more, and or actually what she does, because we see her kill Neville. Is that the
Yeah,
name
yeah,
of? Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
We see him kill him a lot of times. We see it in flashes. We see some montages.
Mm.
How many different death scenes did you actually shoot?
I think we tried to include as many as we could. The dream was how do we get an opportunity to kill him over and over again without it getting old, right? So you get this sort of in succession, the first 5 minutes of the movie, he dies 3 or 4 times. And then we had this scene. So Jeremy doesn't live in Los Angeles where we shot, and he was out here while we were shooting, and he had one day that he was going to be in town that we weren't shooting with him. And we realized in that moment, like, we need to take full advantage of this because doing all of the practical effects, it takes an immense amount of work and prep time. So it kind of kills your day when you're like, well, we can shoot with him, but then he needs to run off to the makeup and then come back like an hour later to do the rest of the shot. And you can't really shoot a whole movie that way because it would just take too long, and you generally need them for other scenes. But there's one day where we had the availability. So what we did is Matt and I split up into 2 units. We flipped a coin. I won, which meant I got to be in the kill room with Jeremy. So we had this amazing makeup artist named Hugo Villaseñor the who did all the makeup effects for movies like Bone Tomahawk. And the guy's like an absolute master. And he's also like a Zen artist. You talk to him and he's so calm, and he's like exactly what you want your amazing makeup artist to be. And we're like, what would, like, if you had all the time in the world, what could you do? And he's like, oh, I'll come up with some stuff. So we had an extra room that we were shooting in, and we would literally send him off with Hugo, and then Hugo would put something amazing on him, and then he'd come back and be like, "What do we got?" And he's like, "We got a huge scar in his head, and it bleeds, and blah blah blah." And we're like, "All right." Then we'd like literally impromptu put something together where either Michaela would hit him, or we had a double, which was actually our production manager, who was like the same build as Michaela, so she had the same outfit on. So she would, hit him with a wrench, and then we'd get the shot really quick and be like, "All right, Hugo, do something else," and they'd run off, and he'd come back with his neck ready to be slashed. So we shot over and over and over that day, just all sort of different stuff that we could play with. But we didn't know how we were going to cut it into the movie yet. We're like, I think at some point we could do a flash somewhere, and the place we thought it was going to work, it didn't work at all. It was going to be in the back of the car with her and the character's name is Jonathan. Jim Cummings plays, where she's having a moment. She's like, I've been killing this guy over and over again. And we're like, and then we'll do boom, 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 a bunch of shots. And we're like, it killed the dramatic tension. Like, fuck, what are we gonna do? And then at some point, it was just finding it in the edit when she's playing with that gun. That we're like, oh, this is the moment that we get to have some fun with it, and it just enlivens a little more violence. You want to have enough violence so that the audience never gets quite bored. And then that other moment at the end of the movie when she does it again, it was just a happy accident. They were like, oh, this would work really well here. So yeah, we were very happy to get a couple extra kills that were extra gruesome in there.
Amazing. And from the start, did you have one particular death scene that you knew from the start that was your favorite, or that was something you looked forward to include? Maybe the opening shot, I imagine.
Yeah, the opening shot was actually one that we discovered kind of late in pre-production. We just knew we had to have a really grabby opening shot that just invited the audience to say, put your phones down, plug in, it should be a fun ride. And so that was pretty late. And we eventually came up with that, talked to our producer and said, what if we lit him on fire? What do you think? And he was like, oh man, how much is that going to cost? And we crunched the numbers, and he's like, I mean, we got to do it. So that was a lucky thing. But the one that we have been talking about from, I think, the script stage, and when we're doing a lot of our stunt kind of tests and camera tests and everything, the one that I was excited about was, I think it's the second kill through the mattress. I thought I've never seen this before. It's very fun, and like you could kind of get the blood cannon in the right area and everything, just to make it all kind of work with each other. And it was funny. I talked to Michaela after that. It's like, so what was that like? And she's like, it felt like I just killed that guy. Like, it was really on the day. It was so startling.
I mean, the whole thing is practical. So that's when we practiced the most. We had Matt and I made our own. I have it up here in my loft, like our own blood cannon. It's that like it's a big tank. I mean, it's ultimately like a little more sophisticated potato cannon, what you'd kind of
Yeah.
build in high school. And there's some PVC attached to it, but it's got a big, robust tank on it. And there's a valve and stuff, so you can load it. You can really load it with blood. And so we were toying around with it. How do we get it to where it looks the most realistic? But it came in handy because you get so much force and so much flow that you could really slam blood against the wall in a really fun way. And I remember at one point we were shooting the gas station shootout when the clerk comes over the side and he gets shot. And we were using squibs for it, like traditional squibs, a little explosive on it that, and just nothing, it wasn't hitting the wall the quite right way. Everything was kind of not quite working. So I went over to the trunk of my car and had this thing waiting for us just in case. And I was like, all right, let me do it. So I got on the ground, I filled this thing up with air, put the whole blood in there. I was like, I'm going to do it myself. And our stunt guy saw me coming. He's like, you sure you want to do this? Like, I got it. It's going to be great. So we filmed the scene, and I put so much blood in the cannon that we nearly painted the entire ceiling with blood. It's like, so you see it hit the wall, but so much of it hit this. We had to paint the whole room. We had to go back and repaint the entire gas station. So yeah, that thing definitely came in handy.
Wow. An awesome story. I really love practical effects, and that's something
Yeah.
that, yeah, that gives something special to the movie as well.
Mm,
And talking about practical effects, the way she travels around this universe, this
yeah,
coffin, or what do you call it? Do you have a name
We
for
call
it?
it the
We just call it-
multiverse machine.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very tactile and very. How did you come up with that particular thing being the way she was traveling?
I think it's described in the script as a coffin meets a refrigerator, right? And like I think we were always found it appealing to it pull from the nostalgia of the sci-fi movies that we always loved, right? So like stuff like uh uh
Back to
stuff
the
like the
Future, Star
DeLorean,
Wars. Yeah.
Star Wars, all these stuff that felt like it had a lot of miles on it was something that was always appealing to us. So we approached our production designer about like how do we get something that feels lived in, and he started designing it with this art director Stephen Dudrow, and we're trying to explain it. It's hard to explain. So I ended up taking some balsa wood and hot gluing it together and spray painting. I actually have it right in front of me. So I built this thing and was like, this is kind of what we're thinking. And it's funny because like obviously I'm not an artist. And he's like, so you want it short, like shorter than a handcart? I was like, oh yeah, I guess handcarts are definitely not this long. But he's like, well, he looked at it, he's like, I get it. I know exactly what you're looking for. So then they built a thing in 3D modeling. Obviously, it was 1,000 times better than that. But what they built in the 3D model and then how it got fabricated was really a joy to see come to life. And it's like that's one thing I will always love. I think most about this movie is that little machine. All the buttons work, different lights turn on, everything about it was just like I want it to be a toy. I want to have a giant toy, and we need to build it.
Yeah, it's very cool. I love it as well. And it gives so much to this universe as well, and the whole side story with her getting some new, what is it
Yeah.
called? Yeah, I can.
I think it's a fuel core in it.
Yeah,
Sort of
exactly. I
Mhm.
love that little detour and give so much to the world, as you said earlier, and it sparks our imaginations as a viewer as well, to how big this universe is and how big this side business, this business these guys have is.
Yeah.
You have been traveling around the world with this film now. I was just saw recently you were in Spain, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. We went to Sitges. Yeah, it was great.
And what has the audience reactions been? Has it been crazy traveling around, seeing this with audience all around the world?
It's been so much fun. I mean, our last movie came out during COVID, so it was I think we decided to spend an extra year in post on the last movie. We're like, what's the difference between the 2019 festival season and 2020? Let's just wait. And then, of course, 2020 was what 2020 was, and it meant we never watched it with an audience. I think we did one drive-in screening, but you're all in your own. It felt like you had 100 different living rooms. Everyone's watching it individually. So, of course, when you make a movie like this, the whole point is to see it not just on a big screen, but with great surround sound and with an audience and to really lean into all those things. So, for us, it was such a joy to travel around, even to the point where when we went to Sitges, they said, "Hey, do you guys want to get lunch during the screening? You guys don't have to watch your own screen. You've seen it 1,000 times." And it was a huge theater. It's like 1,400 people, sold out screening. And I was like, I hate to say it, but I kind of want to watch it with the audience. I'm like, this is what we make it for. I want to see how they react. And it was one of the most fun screenings because it's like they would cheer after every time someone got killed. And of course, people get killed a lot in this movie. So it was so much fun just to watch, Jeremy get killed over and over again. And every time you get a raucous applause. So it was, it was a joy watching it everywhere.
What has the response been from Hollywood? You have made this independently. What have you heard anything from Hollywood? Has any studios reached out or anything like that?
I mean, it's been great. It's been a nice rollout. I think it's really, people are responding to it, which is such a relief. You make these movies and sometimes it feels really insular, and we got to make it with a lot of really close friends and collaborators we've been working with for a long time. So that was the special thing. But then you're just hoping that it hits with people, and so far so good. The fact that we were able to sell the film and it's going to get a release early 2026 is really exciting, and yeah, it's definitely sparked some, what the next projects will be. And so I don't know how much we can talk about those yet, but it's been really good to just have this kind of be the springboard for the next thing. And so yeah, so far so good. People seem to be liking it, thank God.
Do you have any ideas for sequels in this universe?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fun world to live in, right? And so certainly we've got ideas that we thought would be kind of fun and different kinds of versions of what this could be. One of the references we always have is the Animatrix. I loved the first Matrix, and then when the Animatrix came out, I loved seeing what are other people doing in this world that you've created, and that was super fun and exciting. And so sometimes that's what we think about with this. We're like, there's versions of it where Irene and Mia's story goes on, but there's also versions of it where you're like, well, what are other people in this world up to? And so, yeah, those ideas keep playing. Sure.
And like just the multiverse in general, the idea, not even in this, in this quote unquote franchise, but just telling multiverse stories that are personal stories about universes that are so similar, all on its own is like, I think a genre we would love to continue to explore, because there's a lot about Irene and Mia's story that I kind of love, that it's finally a closed-ended loop, that they're not just going off and fighting other terrible guys in the world, which you could certainly do that, but it's them leaving it all behind is sort of closing that story, I think, is what's meaningful to me, and not trying to unravel that story. But yeah, who knows? The wheels are always turning.
He's taken everything from me. I don't even know what I am anymore.